To mark the moment I reached 10,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel, I thought I'd do a special video to showcase some discs that I've been wanting to film for a while now for my channel. So what are they? There are 4, count them, pre-release Rockstar video games. There's a Thrasher Skate and Destroy disc for PlayStation 1, 2 Smuggler's Run discs for PlayStation 2 and a Midnight Club disc also for PlayStation 2. So to answer a couple of preliminary questions, firstly, what are these discs? Well, during the development of video games, discs like these are usually sent out to journalists so they can write about them for their magazines. In turn, this creates publicity for the games and essentially makes people want to buy them. So, usually discs like these are sent back to their publishers, i.e. Rockstar, when the journalists are finished with them, or they're sometimes kept by the magazine as well. But sometimes they're even disposed of. However, certain discs like these sometimes find their way into the hands of collectors, like me.
2 of these discs, one of the Smuggler's Run discs and the Midnight Club disc, are both marked preview, which means that journalists couldn't have used these discs to review the games, only write articles to give fans an idea of what to expect from the final games. They're both from July 2000 as well, which dates them to around 3 months before the games were released. The Thrasher Skate and Destroy disc is marked review, which means that journalists could have reviewed the game using this disc, which means that it's very similar to the final build. The date on the disc is actually later than the game's initial release date. The other Smuggler's Run disc isn't marked with anything, though it's a slightly earlier build than the preview disc, still from July 2000, though interestingly both builds are pretty different from one another. So to quickly go over the Thrasher Skate and Destroy disc, there's nothing really to say about the gameplay, but the disc itself does make for a nice collector's item, as like the others, it's on an official Rockstar disc. Moving on to Smuggler's Run, let's first check out the earlier unmarked disc. It's on an official Rockstar disc as well, but due to the colour scheme, it's fairly difficult to make out the Rockstar logo. If you're unfamiliar with the game itself, let me give you a quick overview of how it works. You play as a smuggler, hence the name of the game, outrunning rival gangs and the authorities to collect and deliver various packages. Missions are split between the standard pickups and drop-offs, races against other gangs, situations where you have to grab more contraband than your rivals in a capture the flag type environment, as well as missions where you're destroying radio antennas. And there are also mini-games, more races and capture the flag type scenarios that differ to the ones that you face in the Smuggler's missions. And there's also a free roam mode too. Starting up the early disc, the differences here are already evident. The menu screens have a camouflage background instead of the black and orange scheme we just saw on the final game. Just to check out joyriding quickly, there are no images of the levels here, but the levels themselves do remain fairly similar to the final build. On the vehicle select screen, you can see some very early renders of the cars. The military cars have a moon and star logo on the side, and as well, the rally car is named the Desert Rally Car here. The O'Grady's remains pretty much the same, though they're also referred to as Snake. The Dogs of God, or Tiger team, was completely changed to the Quebecois in the final game, and the cars' logos were changed too. The A20s had no name here, but the short name for the team is Skull. The cars themselves do look very similar to the final build though. The Sierra Cartel team, also known as Demon, originally had red cars, which were changed to blue in the final game. And switching things around, the Forgotten, also referred to as Spider, had blue cars which were swapped to red in the final game. The Border Patrol looks pretty similar to the final version, while the CIA has a totally different colour scheme here. Their cars are black, the same as in GTA 3, in the actual Smuggler's Run game. Sadly though, some of these differences only exist in these images themselves, and as you can see here, the Sierra Cartel cars have their final colour scheme in actual gameplay, while other differences, like the Dogs of God team, are reflected in the cars themselves. After an excruciatingly long loading screen, which I've skipped most of for you guys, we're finally playing some Smuggler's Run. The first thing you're likely to notice is the debug information above the bright green damage meter in the top left hand corner of the screen. You might also spot the different looking speedometer in the bottom left hand corner. And as for the levels themselves, they're pretty similar to the final version, with some minor differences. And the train here is lighter in colour than on the final version, I believe. Anyway, let's go and check out the missions. This is where some of the biggest differences can really be felt. Now, I'll just show you the first mission today, but I believe most of them, if not all of them, are different to the missions on the final game. Loading up the first mission, this is actually mission 13 from the final game. There was no easy mission to start you off at this stage of the game's development. You were thrown right in at the deep end. Or it would seem. Now, if you're familiar with the game, you might recognise this mission as the one that's fairly challenging. However, back at this stage of the game's development, it was a lot shorter, with just 2 stages of pickups and drop-offs. Another big difference here is that when you pick up contraband, it floats around on top of your car. Now, this was likely changed because A, it's unrealistic, and B, it gets in the way when you're trying to see where you're going, perhaps like the Halo in Formula 1 next season. Coming up to the first drop-off now, and you'll see that the end goal here is a checkered flag on poles. It's a very literal interpretation of a finish line. You'll see that this path is glitchy here in this build too, as we head towards the second pickup. And the police do chase you, as expected, but they don't seem to be as effective as on the final game. They don't really bother you all that much, to be honest. Upon finishing the mission, your current score and best score are displayed on the screen, and you get a rating in the form of a letter. In the final version, this was changed to being rated as words, going from OK to good, and finally great. The lettering system was actually reintroduced in Smuggler's Run 2. Moving on to the second Smuggler's Run disc, the unmarked preview. This disc has a lovely black and blue colour scheme, and you can see the date clearly marked on the disc here as July 2000. Upon loading, you can see that the title screen and menus have started to look a little more like the final version now, as you'd expect from a slightly later build. There are no car images on the vehicle selection screen on joyriding here, though the team names still remain the same. One thing to note is the mention of the name Hummer. This was changed to the military vehicle in the final game, probably due to copyright issues. A similar car appeared in the early development days of GTA 3 as well, the Humvee, which later became the Patriot. When the game loads up, it immediately gives you the cinematic camera for some reason. This is the Dogs of God livery, by the way. It's quite odd overall, and the logos on the front are quite glitchy, especially on the massive truck here. They should look like 3 red X's. You might also notice that we now have some music to accompany us on the level. The debug info and green damage bar are still present, and the speedometer also looks similar to the earlier build, though the colour has been changed to a light grey. Some of the buildings are a little odd and unfinished. You can see through some of the windows, revealing no interior of course, and the other buildings have these strange red crosses on them. I honestly have no idea why this is. Do the residents have the plague or something? When you go to play a mission, the cars do load up on the screen now, though the models are the cars in their fully damaged states. Weirdly, the massive truck and the trophy truck have somehow been confused here, as the models correspond with the wrong car names. The Hummer is also referred to as military here, which is a step closer to its final name. Playing this original first mission once again, you can see that not much has changed between the earlier build and this one, as it's only a matter of days that would separate the two builds. The contraband no longer spins around on top of your car though, and to highlight the fact that you're carrying contraband now, this is instead shown by a yellow-orange triangle that appears above the car. This isn't dissimilar from the final game, where your allies have red triangles above their cars when carrying contraband, and your enemies have blue ones. And as we come through to finish the mission, you can see that the checkered flag has now gone, and has been replaced by 3 plumes of red smoke, which is more similar to the final game. Okay, let's move on to Midnight Club now. You can see from the look of the disc that it's very similar to the Smuggler's Run one we just saw, which isn't surprising considering that the 2 discs are only a few days apart. To give you a little background information on the game, if you're not familiar with it, Midnight Club is a racing game like Need for Speed that sees you competing in street races against local racers and their homeboys. You can unlock new cars by playing through career mode and customise them too. Races usually comprise of a series of checkpoints where you'll be racing against a specific rival or a group of cars. Either way, winning is good. Loading up the preview build, you'll see that the Rockstar and Angel Studios logos are almost placeholders at this point in time, and were replaced with animated logos in the final build. The menu screens on this disc actually look pretty similar to the final game. So let's push on and check out the cars. The first thing you'll notice is that they're all really shiny for some reason, and the first taxi cars seem to be identical to their final version counterparts. The Crucero Bueno, Excelente and Magnifico all look to have the same bodies as on the final build, but their decals and vinyls have not yet been added at this stage of the game. You might also notice that they're all red. This is a theme of the beta cars in this video. I warn you now, you're going to see a lot of red. Moving on to the game's trio of pickup trucks, the Jones J400, J420 and J450, they're all red again, when in the final version they were green, yellow and blue. No decals or vinyls here either, though the actual shape of the body of the cars seems to be unchanged. Now we have the Piranha PDQ, PDQ-R and PDQ-ARI, some of the smallest vehicles on the game, packing a punch when it comes to acceleration and handling. The PDQ-R does have some logos on the back, so it seems they made a start in developing this car's looks further, while the PDQ-ARI also has a Veilside logo at the back, so it's not just the R that was treated to some decals. The PT Phoenix Standard, Phoenix DDX and Phoenix ICX are all up next, all looking very plain and very red at this stage of development, much like the other cars we've seen so far. Of course, the name Phoenix would also be present in the Grand Theft Auto universe from Vice City onwards, and would also be a muscle car, though the resemblance between the two cars finishes there. Now we turn our attention to the modicum XSV, XSV.5 and XSV.25. If the PDQ is one of the smallest cars in the game, then the modicum is the smallest of all, being based on the Mini. The amazing thing here is that none of the cars are red, the XSV being grey, the XSV.5 being brown, and the XSV.25 being gold, which looks awesome in my opinion. Coming up to the Ascent 235, 235SI and 470DS, these are either silver or blue. Basically it depends how much emphasis you want to put on the extreme reflections here in the car select menu. They all are, of course, missing their decals and vinyls, though the body shape again does not seem to have changed between this preview build from July 2000 until October, when the game was released. Now to the Amata, Fiorenza, Fiorenza 2 and Crescendo, well at least the first two, as the Crescendo appears further on, out of order. Both cars didn't change too much, as they of course come in a Ferrari red, which relates to the cars they're based on. The Zenda Alpha appears next, being gold in colour, similar to the XSV.25 we saw earlier. In the final game, it's a dark purple or blue, but of course the car colours are customisable in the final game. Now we come up to the Kuruma Farsuto GR, Farsuto GS and Farsuto GT. The GR does have a vinyl on the door, however this was either removed or changed before the final build was released. Naturally, you'll be drawn to the name Kuruma, which also appears in the GTA universe alongside the Phoenix, but the car is less of a Nissan Skyline over there and more of a Dodge Intrepid. Here is the Crescendo, which completes the trio of Fiorenza cars. Completely devoid of any decals or vinyls, it's a shiny black colour, which is different to the final build where it's grey and red. And also out of order we have the Zenda Beta, in a similar black colour to the final build, but missing its stripes and skull and crossbones logos. And here's the Zender Type S, looking very similar to the final build of the game, only shinier, much like all the other cars on this preview build. Also out of order is the Super Taxi, which like the Zender Type S before it, looks very similar to how it appears on the final game, complete with blown engine and wide wheels. Now here's a real beta vehicle for you, the Marauder. On this preview build, it's a full-blown truck with a huge shovel attached. On the final build, it retains a similar smaller shovel, but its body is still that of a taxi, not a massive truck. It also lacks the reflections that other cars have on this preview build, except for the little cab on the top. Several of the traffic cars look unchanged, like the bus and the ice cream truck. Vice City's Mr. Whoopi, anyone? And as you can see, you can easily zoom in and out of the cars here to get a good look at them. You can even zoom in to the point where you're actually inside the body of the car. The meter maid has an NYC logo on it, which was actually unchanged on the final build. However, all the other police vehicles in the game have MCPD, Midnight Club Police Department, in the final build, most likely for copyright reasons, rather than using NYPD. Ever wanted to see inside the London bus? Well, now you can, and there are actually no seats in there. I guess it's standing room only. The bus is pretty much unchanged, as is the London taxi. So let's keep going and see some more cars with small beta elements to them. Remember the Crown Mail van from the final game? Well, if not, it's basically a Royal Mail van with the logo changed to prevent copyright issues. Here though, the original Royal Mail logo is intact and unchanged. The police cars from the New York level have NYPD on the side. As referred to when we were discussing the meter maid, this was changed to MCPD in the final game to avoid any kind of copyright or legal issues. And this logo is mirrored and glitchy on the blue cop car here. I believe the rest of the police cars shown here for New York and London are pretty much unchanged. So once I've cycled through them all here, it's time to go for a spin. I'll pick the Marauder to drive here, as this is the vehicle that has changed the most between this preview build and the final game. Just like Smuggler's Run, the loading times are yet to be optimised on these early builds, so I'm going to skip through it for you guys and jump straight into the action. The first thing to note is, why am I driving like a total idiot? Well, two reasons. The first that, when the level loads up, the AI sort of drives for you, and you have limited control of the vehicle. It's very strange, and seems to be fixed by just messing around with the controls for a short time. The second reason is that the car just isn't that functional, unfortunately. It's a shame, as it looks like you could do some serious damage with it, but it's almost undrivable, unfortunately. It looks like it steers with its rear wheels though, so that could be part of the problem. The next thing you might be thinking is, what the hell is that music? Well, I'm not sure what it's supposed to be, but the music just doesn't seem to play properly. And I'm playing on real hardware here too, so I can't even blame an emulator. Also, the speedometer at the bottom right looks similar to the final game, but not exact, while the map is made up of blue lines showing the street layout, while in the final build this was changed to grey. Okay, so we're going to load the level back up with the Zender Alpha, which is a far more functional car. Another thing to address here is that the game has automatically loaded up at dusk, which reminds me of those beautiful colours in the sky that were present in pre-release footage and trailers of Grand Theft Auto 3. I wish they kept that in. Anyway, on the final game, you're able to choose between dusk, dawn or night. Seemingly you can only have dusk on this beta build. Another thing you might notice is the sheer amount of traffic there is on the roads. On the final version you can adjust the level of traffic on free roam mode, but even when putting it at its max setting it never gets this crowded. I assume they dialed this down for better racing. I'm sure the levels themselves do have some differences, but I've not had time to explore them thoroughly, though you can see that the ceiling is different here on the military ship. Though you can still fly off it just the same, and that's my car done for. One last thing to mention is the Brooklyn Bridge, which looks incredibly bright on this preview build, and was dulled down on the final build, for realism probably. There's also an absence of traffic cars here on the highway until you reach a certain spot. Oh, there's all the traffic. So you can see the Brooklyn Bridge behind me, and what is that bus doing? I guess that's pretty typical for a buggy beta build. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this showcase of several pre-release Rockstar discs. Hopefully one day I can add a similar Grand Theft Auto 3 disc to this small but growing collection. Thanks for watching.